So first one is about the beginning of modern nationalism in India. So when we discuss about the modern nationalism, so this is very important, this topic, because it will tell you a lot of it will cover a lot of questions that could be asked in your exam. So let's start. So first one is the Ilbert Bill controversy that we are going to read about. So firstly, if I like to tell you about it, the Ilbert Bill was basically came during the time of Lord Ripon, and it was related to providing a particular order to the Indian judges that they can also give punishments to the British prisoners who are particularly going through trials in the courts of India. So let's read more about it. So Ilbert Bill was a controversial bill proposed in 1883, which allows senior Indian judges to try European offenders. Earlier, only European judges could try European offenders. So this became a controversy at that time, because as soon as the Indian judges got the power to provide this particular judgment, so they did not even think twice before giving any kind of judgment or any kind of punishment to the European offenders, because they were feeling a bit when the European offenders, the punishment cannot be given by the Indian judges at that time. So that is why, as soon as they got the power, they started giving a lot of harsh punishments to them. The bill was introduced by Viceroy Lord Ripon. So Lord Ripon, basically, I hope you know, was famously known as the father of local self-government in our country. And Lord Ripon was also famous for one more thing, that he officially started the census of India. We know that the census was particularly started as a practice, as a pilot project by Lord Mayo, but officially it was started in 1881 by Lord Ripon. The bill had to face intense criticism from the Europeans and Britishers, because they look it as a humiliation, as it placed Indian judges at par with European judges. It is obvious that Europeans would not be feeling good that Indian judges are providing punishments and other things. So that is why the bill was basically facing criticism by all of them. It was withdrawn due to opposition in Britain and from British settlements in India, and was reintroduced in much diluted state, which means that firstly it was withdrawn, and then after some particular restrictions on Indian judges, it was again passed. So that was the Ilbert Bill controversy. So do remember two things. One is it was introduced in 1883, and second is it was introduced during the viceroyship of Lord Ripon. The other thing is that what is Ilbert Bill controversy all about? So Ilbert Bill is basically related to the Indian judges providing punishments or giving punishment to the European offenders. So this was a remarkable controversy in the history of our country. Apart from it, there was also the controversy of the Gagging Act, that was basically also known as the restrictions that was put on press, and famously known as the Vernacular Press Act. So that was another controversy that came before Lord Ripon, and another controversy was Ilbert Bill. Let's read something about the Indian National Congress. This is really important. We need to know a lot about them, and we will see the foundation, the moderate phase, and some other things related to it, especially all the important sessions as well. So the leaders of this period were Dada Bhai Naroji, Mahadev Govind Ranade, Gopal Krishna Gokhale, W.C. Banerjee, S.N. Banerjee, Firoj Shah Mehta, etc. So if we talk about the Indian National Congress, first of all, the Indian National Congress, the Congress word was given by Mr. Dada Bhai Naroji. Congress means a large meeting. And basically, these were the prominent leaders who were the one who started this particular party, and who were, you can also say, the founding members of this. We all know that it was founded during the time of Lord Dufferin in 1885 on 28th of December. But all of these have their own remarkable steps taken so that this Congress can be formed. They raised basic questions regarding the nature and purpose of British rule. They did economic critics using following arguments. So particularly there were a lot of things that were said by all of these people. So let's read about them. First is drain theory. This is really important. Remember, guys, drain theory of wealth was given by Mr. Dadabhai Naroji and was also put in his book. His book was famously known as The Poverty and Un-British Rule in India. Dadabhai Naroji was the first Persian president. We will talk about him in the coming sessions. And do remember that this theory tells us about that how the Britishers are draining the wealth of our country and basically boosting the economy and boosting the infrastructure of London. Critic of railways. Railways is also one of the very criticized tool that was introduced by the Britishers in India. Why it was criticized? Basically, I hope you know, because firstly, when the Britishers were came into India and they started looting our country, basically. So they looted our country on the outskirts, like on the coastal areas, majorly like Surat, Masulipattnam, Madras. But with the help of railways, now they can particularly also go into the depth of this country. They can connect these particular all the cities and all the other things to these coastal areas, and with the help of that they will particularly transport all the goods and services, all the goods and items, and then they can take them to the London. So this was another thing, and that is how why the railways was criticized. Deindustrialization of India, that is also another important thing. As we all know that if we talk about the early 18th century, mid 18th century and 19th century whole, was basically the time when the industrial revolution was started and was boosted in all over the world. And Britishers were so enthusiastic about it that they wanted to introduce only their goods through of their industries into the system of India, and that is why they particularly degraded the industrial industries of our country, the handicraft making of our country, and that is why the deindustrialization of India was done, and that is why this is one of the key point that was said by all these people during the critics of Britishers. So particularly if we talk about the Indian National Congress, so at the earlier phase of Indian National Congress, lot of different people, like you can see here, they all were the part of it, and they started particularly introducing their theories and create awareness in the people. Another one, so some of the leaders behind economic critic, so let's read about them also. So first thing that we need to know about is Ramesh Chandra Dutt. He was a retired ICS officer, published the economic history of India at the beginning of the 20th century, in which he examined in minute details the entire economic record of colonial rule since 1757. So first of all, if we talk about Ramesh Chandra Dutt, so do remember his name, and he was the retired ICS officer, so he had closely done a lot of things, a lot of work with the Britishers, and he know that how they loot and particularly what are the methods they adopt. So in the 20th century, that means basically from 1900 to 1999, basically from 1947, we would say. So in the early beginning of the 20th century, he wrote down a particular things and told the minute detail of every economic record of colonial rule since 1757. That was the time when the Battle of Plassey was fought. I hope you remember. Justice M.G. Ranade, he taught an entire generation of Indians the value of modern industrial development and said that if India is poor today, it is because of economic policies of British. So when we talk about Justice M.G. Ranade, so he was also a very important person. The value of modern industrial development was basically told to the people of this country, and he also criticized the Britishers' economic policies. So do remember his name. His full name was Mahadev Govind Ranade. Then comes the famous Dadabhai Naroji, who is also known as the Grand Old Man of India. He was also called a Grand Old Man, as I was saying. Gokhale called him Gladstone of India. He was the main proponent of drain theory. He wrote Poverty and Un-British Rule in India. Also, if I like to tell you more, he was the first Persian person who became the president of Indian National Congress in 1886. After that, if we talk about Mr. Dadabhai Naroji, So he also was the one who calculated the first national income of this country. So do you remember his name? His name was Dadabhai Naroji. And one more thing I would like to add, that apart from Jawaharlal Nehru, he was the one who was given, who became the maximum number of times the president of Indian National Congress before the independence. So do you remember his name? So I hope all these names and their critics are clear to all of you. And these are the people who basically started the early time of Indian National Congress. Now let's see the foundation and the moderate phase of Indian National Congress. So first of all, A.O. Hume mobilized the leading intellectuals and organized the first session of INC at Bombay in December 1885. The first session of INC was presided over by W.C. Banerjee. Other important presidents include Dadabhai Naroji, was elected 3 times as president. Badruddin Tayyabji, Firoz Shah Mehta, Sarojini Naidu, among others. Safety valve theory. Hume argued that INC would prove to be a safety valve for releasing the growing discontent of Indian. So if we talk about these things, first of all, one by one. So do remember that A.O. Hume was also the secretary of the Indian National Congress, the first secretary of Indian National Congress. At that time, Lord Dufferin was the viceroy. And this particular Congress, the first session was started on 28th of December 1885. Safety valve theory. Hume argued that INC would prove to be a safety valve for releasing the growing discontent of Indian. So do remember all the names that we have discussed so far. Now let's see some of the important sessions of the Congress, and I will tell you very important things related to them one by one. So guys, here you can see there is a list of number of sessions. So keep your notebooks in your hand and I will tell you more than written here. So first one was the first session that was happened in 1885, and it particularly happened in Bombay. The president was W.C. Banerjee, means Vomesh Chandra Banerjee, remember that. And this session was attended by 72 members at that time. And if we talk about these 72 members, one thing is really important for you to know, that this particular session was held in Gokul Das Tejpal Sanskrit College, that is in Bombay, and remember that as well. And it was the first session held on 28th of December 1885. After that comes the second one. So second session was basically happened in 1886. So basically there was the sessions of Indian National Congress are annual thing. Remember that. As if we are talking about the first session, the second session, the third session, all of these sessions are annual sessions. So every year there is a session. At some of the exceptional areas, we can see exceptions, and some particular years we can see 2 sessions as well, like in 1920. Special sessions was also called. And if we talk about the year 1940 to 1946, no session happened particularly. From 1940 to 1946, Abul Kalam Azad remained the president of Indian National Congress, because the war was going on and no particular as an annual meeting held in these particular years. Third one was 1887, when Badruddin Tayyabji he became the president, and Madras was the place, and he was the first Muslim president. Do you remember that? And during this session, a particular speech was also said, that be the Congressy. Remember that. That in which session be the Congressy slogan was given. That was in the third session, 1887. Then comes the fourth session, very important, once again, 1888. And in that session, the president was George Yule. And this was the fourth session, and it happened in Allahabad. Today it is known as Prayagraj. And this was the first English president. So remember the name George Yule. He was the first English president, and to become the part of Indian National Congress and the president of Indian National Congress. And you would be thinking that if it is an Indian National Congress and their work is related to telling that how Britishers are looting and all that, then how George Yule basically became the president, because some of the Britishers were also good and they wanted to create awareness in the people of this country. But on the other side, some people also think as a safety valve theory, that they wanted to release the pressure among the Indians, and that is why they particularly use this theory. Then comes the 12th session, very important, 1896. Do remember, you don't need to remember all the sessions. 12th session was 1896. Rahimatullah Siani, Calcutta, Vande Mataram was sung for the first time. So this was the 12th session. Then comes the 20th session, 1904. Henry Cotton, Bombay. He became the president of this session. Do not consider him the second English president. No, that is not. Weber was the second English president, and he became the president of Indian National Congress in around 1889. So he was the second one. Henry Cotton was another English president of Indian National Congress. Then comes the 21st session, that was in 1905, and Gopal Krishna Gokhale, also famously known as the leader of the moderates among the Indian National Congress, and was also famously known as the political guru of Mahatma Gandhi. He became the president at Varanasi session in 1905. Then comes the very important 22nd session, that was in 1906. Dadabhai Naoroji became the president, and this session was held in Calcutta, if we talk about. So do remember Dadabhai Naoroji, famously known as the Grand Old Man of India. Dadabhai Naoroji was also famously known as the person who introduced the drain theory of wealth to this country and wrote a book, Poverty and Un-British Rule in India. One more thing, if we talk about Mr. Dadabhai Naoroji, is that basically that Dadabhai Naoroji was famously known for one important thing, and that is he is known as the Grand Old Man of our country. Then comes the word Swaraj. Swaraj used for the first time by the president. Now remember this point very well, guys. So far, till 1906, there was no thinking or no ideology of getting Swaraj or independence. Remember, independence was not even introduced. We are still talking about Swaraj. Swaraj means basically that we will be your companion and we together take care of this country. That is the basic meaning of Swaraj. Swaraj is not a thing that we will particularly ourselves are sufficient and we do not require you. No, that is not. Swaraj is a thing that particularly asks the Britishers that you can also provide us some particular responsibilities and we together along with you will rule this country. So that was the basic meaning of Swaraj. Purn Swaraj, the ideology of Purn Swaraj or thinking of Purn Swaraj came in 1829 during the Lahore session, and at that session Mr. Jawaharlal Nehru became the president of Indian National Congress for the first time. Now some other important sessions of Congress. So another one is 23rd, 1907, Ras Bihari Ghosh, Surat. First split of Congress into moderates and extremists. So if we talk about the 23rd session, so in 1907, Ras Bihari Ghosh was basically appointed as the president, and it was also the time when the Congress was basically feeling discontinuity and a lot of disputes are going on between different type of leaders, and that is why the Surat session is famously known as the Surat the session, the split session of Congress. And first split of Congress into moderates and extremists happened. Basically, Congress was divided into two parts. One is moderate, that was led by Mr. Gopal Krishna Gokhale, and the other ones were extremists. They were led by Lal Bal Pal, that is Lala Lajpat Rai, Bal Gangadhar Tilak, and Bipin Chandra Pal. And just after this session, both Lala Lajpat Rai and Mr. Bal Gangadhar Tilak both were arrested and imprisoned in jail. So this was the way of Britishers to suppress the extremism in our country. They were okay with the moderates, but not with the extremism. That is why they particularly imprisoned both of them. Then comes the 26th session, very important, 1911, Bishan Narayan Dhar at Calcutta. He became the president and Jan Gan Man was sung for the first time. So there's a big story behind it. Actually, what happened was the third Delhi Darbar was organized, and the coronation of George V, the new king of Britain, was to be done during this particular time, and he was called to India. Basically, try to understand this thing as whenever Britishers feel that a lot of contention was going on in the mind of Indians, as soon as they find this thing, they particularly call them and they particularly ask them to provide a very important thing that you should visit. They ask the monarch of their country that you should visit and directly contact with the people and tell them that everything is okay. So because of that, third Delhi Darbar was organized. George V came along with his wife. His coronation was done in Delhi. Obviously, two three things were particularly said by George V. First, the capital was shifted from Calcutta to Delhi. Second, the particular partition of the Bengal that was done in 1905, which we will talk about later, was particularly abolished by George V. So both of these things were particularly said by George V, and his coronation was also done. And during his visit, some people, or the friend of George V, who was a common friend of Rabindranath Tagore also, he asked Mr. Rabindranath Tagore to write a song that will describe the country. So after that thing, Mr. Rabindranath Tagore, he wrote a song that was famously known as Jan Gan Man, and this song was sung for the first time in 1911 Calcutta session. Later, it became the part of controversy, but today it is famously known as the national anthem of our country. Then comes the 27th session of Congress, that was in 1912. R.N. Modolkar, Bankipur, Patna. If we talk about this one, so 1912 R.N. Modolkar, Bankipur, Patna was basically the 27th session. And in this session, particularly, nothing very important happened. So do remember this, that only the president was R.N. Modolkar. Then comes the 31st session, very important one, 1916, Ambika Charan Majumdar, Lucknow. Merger of Congress and Muslim League. So guys, if you know, 1915 was the time, 9th of January 1915, a famous personality came back to India from South Africa. That was Mr. Mahatma Gandhi. At that time was not known as Mahatma. He came back and under the guidance of Mr. Gopal Krishna Gokhale, firstly, he traveled throughout India. And then in particular 1916, he started a particular ashram that is famously known as Sabarmati Ashram. And earlier was known as Ahmedabad Ashram, later named after Sabarmati River, Sabarmati Ashram. And in 1916, a session was held in Lucknow. This was a Congress session. And during this session, the merger of the Congress and Muslim League happened. And also, if we talk about the merger of Congress also took place, like the extremists and moderates also came together. So this was the only time when both the parts of Congress, moderates and extremists, and apart from them, the Muslim League, all three came together to create a particular unity and to fight against the Britishers. Then in 1918, Madan Mohan Malviya in Delhi, basically he became the president of the Congress. He became the president after the resignation of S.N. Banerjee. The full name was Surendranath Banerjee, and Surendranath Banerjee is famous for Swadeshi movement that happened in 1905 after the partition of Bengal. Then the 34th session, 1919, Motilal Nehru, he became the president. Motilal Nehru was the father of Jawaharlal Nehru, we all know, and he became the president at Amritsar. Then comes the 35th session, 1920, C. Vijay Raghav Chariar in Nagpur, basically. He became the president, and non-cooperation movement resolution passed. So earlier, I hope you remember, I told you that in 1920, two sessions were held. One is in Nagpur and another one is in Calcutta. Calcutta session was a special session. And in 1920, in this session, the Nagpur session, the Vijay Raghav Chariar, under his guidance or under his leadership, non-cooperation movement resolution was passed and was implemented in whole country. Then from 1920 to 1922, this particular movement was particularly held in our country under the leadership of Mr. Mahatma Gandhi. Do remember one more thing, that non-cooperation movement, if we talk about, was started on the day on which Mr. Bal Gangadhar Tilak died in 1920. Then comes the 36th session, that was in 1921. C.R. Das, that means Chitranjan Das, in prison, Ahmedabad. He became the president, but as we know, he was in prison because he was a part of non-cooperation movement. So on his place, Hakim Ajmal Khan became the acting president. So do remember this one. This becomes important session because C.R. Das was in jail, and because of that, Hakim Ajmal Khan became the acting president. Some other sessions also, guys. So 37th session, that was in 1922. C.R. Das became the president of this session in Gaya. And do remember, this was the time when the non-cooperation movement was called off, and Gandhiji was basically arrested. And C.R. Das was also in opposition of Gandhiji along with Mr. Motilal Nehru. And after this session of 1922 at Gaya, C.R. Das and Motilal Nehru, they founded the Swaraj Party, also known as Congress Khilafat Party, in 1923. Then comes the 38th session, 1923. That was Maulana Muhammad Ali. And Kakinada was the place where this session was held. Then comes the special session. As in 1920, a special session was held. And again, in 1923, another special session was held. And in 1923, in Delhi, this session was held. And Abul Kalam Azad became the president. And he became the youngest president of Indian National Congress so far by that time, 1923. And he was only 35 years old at that time. Then comes the very important session, guys, the 39th session, and that was held in 1924. Mahatma Gandhi became the president of Indian National Congress. Remember, this was the only time and last time when Mahatma Gandhi became the president of INC. And then comes this session was held in Belgaum. So do remember this one. This is very important. And if you are all thinking that Mahatma Gandhi was in jail, how he became the president? So in 1924, he came out of jail and because of illness, but he also retired from active politics. So in 1924, Mahatma Gandhi became the person. Now in 1925, that is the 40th session, and Sarojini Naidu became the president, very important, and that was in Kanpur, first Indian woman president. Now I would like to tell 2 points here. One is, in 1925, when this session was held in Kanpur, this was the same year when the Kakori conspiracy happened. And apart from that, remember one more thing. If we are talking about Sarojini Naidu, so she became the first Indian woman president of INC. But if someone asks you that who became the first woman president of Indian National Congress, then the answer will be Annie Besant. Remember that. In 1917, that was not there in the list. In 1917, the Calcutta session was held, and in that session, Annie Besant became the first woman president of INC. Annie Besant was also famous for Home Rule League movement, and she brought this ideology into our country. And that is why in 1917 in Calcutta, she became the first woman president of INC. But if someone asks you first Indian woman, then that was Sarojini Naidu in Kanpur. Then comes the 41st session, 1926, Srinivas Iyengar. And he became the president at Guwahati session. Every Congress person to compulsory wear khadi. Remember this. This also becomes important. In which session it was made compulsory for every member of an INC to wear khadi. So that was basically done in 1926. So this was the time when Mahatma Gandhi was on his point during the 1920 that he promoted khadi clothes and to all the people, and still he is doing that. And there were also some other rules to become the member of Indian National Congress. Every day, particularly every person of Indian National Congress has to particularly weave the khadi and also to make clothes. That is also another particular point to become the member of INC. So that was done. After that, 42nd session was held in 1927, and M.A. Ansari, that was basically the session was held in Madras. Purn Swaraj, total independence was now the aim of Congress. So Purn Swaraj, basically total independence was now the aim of Congress, and this was done in the 1927. M.A. Ansari became the president during this session. So let me tell you a little bit about it. So Purn Swaraj, the idea of Purn Swaraj was basically formulated from the revolutionaries, especially if I go into the history, it was formulated by the words of Mr. Bhagat Singh. Congress adopted it in 1927 and started talking about it that we should not go for only for Swaraj but for Poon Swaraj. So now in this session, the Madras session in 1927, the total independence or Poon Swaraj became the one of the goal of Congress. So do remember that. Then in 1928, the Motilal Nehru Calcutta session was held. First All India Youth Congress formed. One more thing happened here. Do remember that. This was also the time when, on the one side, in 1927, Simon Commission was formed in Britain and was to be sent in 1928 to India. Indians were basically so angered with that decision of Britishers that they wanted a particular part to they wanted to become the part of Simon Commission. There is a back history of Simon Commission that in 1919 the Government of India Act came that was famously known as Montague-Chelmsford Reforms, and according to this act, after 10 years after coming of this act, a committee will be formed, and this committee will take care that what should be done and how the things would be done regarding the further acts that will particularly use to rule the country. So as according to the things, the committee should to be formed in 1929, but Britishers are also seeing a lot of things are happening in our country in India. A lot of revolutionary movements, a lot of different type of national movements are happening. So they particularly created this commission 2 years back, that was in 1927, and famously known as the Simon Commission. So Simon Commission was coming in 1928. Indians particularly challenged the Simon Commission, and the Secretary of State of India at that time, that was Birkenhead, he particularly challenged the Indians that if you can create a better report, then you should, and you will submit it to me, then I will talk about it. So in 1928, the Nehru report was also particularly published, on which the All India Conference was working, in which Indian National Congress and other parties were working together. Then comes the 1929 Jawaharlal Nehru Lahore session happened. Poon Swaraj resolution was passed. So this was the time when Poon Swaraj resolution was finally passed in 1929. And to commemorate it, to celebrate it, in 1930, on 26th of January in 1930, the first Independence Day of India was celebrated. So this was a kind of a thing that the Indian National Congress was telling the people that now we have demanded the Poon Swaraj and now we will be working on it only. So 26th of January, we are marking this day as the first Independence Day, that we are now moving towards another thing, and they recognize it as the first Independence Day. Later in 1950, on 26th of January, the date was chosen to particularly enforce the constitution in our country. That was the reason. Then in 1931, the Karachi session happened, and that was the 45th session, and Vallabhbhai Patel became the president of this session. Resolution on fundamental rights and national economic policy was particularly put forward. So we know Simon Commission came in 1928 to India, and they were particularly traveling all around India, meeting different peoples, and they are also making the report. So at that time, particularly during all this time, the different type of recommendations and different type of things are coming. From 1928 to 1935, you will see in lot of different type of Congress sessions, a lot of people are saying different things. So same goes with the 1931 session, that the fundamental rights were demanded. Then in 1934, Rajendra Prasad, Bombay, they became this particular place, 48th president he became, and 48th session was it. And in 1934, Rajendra Prasad became the president, and this session was held in Bombay, and formation of Congress Socialist Party was basically started. Then comes the 50th session, that was in 1937. Jawaharlal Nehru, that is in Faizpur, he became the president, and the first session to be held in a village. So first of all, do remember, this was the session, very important session, as during this time the provincial elections were going on in our country. According to the 1935 Government of India Act, the provincial autonomy was given, and because of which the provincial elections are to be held in our country. And during these elections, basically, Jawaharlal Nehru put forward a particular session, and in that session he particularly gave a particular discourse to the people of this village. And during these elections, Congress came out to be the largest party that won in maximum number of provinces. We will talk about it later on in further details. some other sessions, guys. Then comes the 37th session. Basically, it was in 1922, C.R. Das Gaya. We already talked about it. Then in 1938, very important, guys, 51st session was holded. Subhash Chandra Bose became the president, and that session was holded in Haripura. National Planning Committee set up under the chairmanship of Jawaharlal Nehru. So this was the time, and the 51st session was holded in 1938, and Subhash Chandra Bose for the first time became the president of Indian National Congress. And he particularly, according to his ideology, he talked to a lot of things. He particularly also told people that now is the time that we should do something, that we can snatch the freedom from the hands of Britishers. So at this time particularly, there was a kind of a dispute arises between Congress, and especially between Subhash Chandra Bose and Mahatma Gandhi on the other side. So in the very next session, we can see the 52nd session that was in 1939, that was holded in Tripuri, and Subhash Chandra Bose was elected as the president, but Rajendra Prasad took over. So resignation of Bose, that is Subhash Chandra Bose, and Rajendra Prasad took over, formation of the forward bloc. So let me tell you a bit about it, this story. So what happened is that in 1938 in Haripura session, when Subhash Chandra Bose was telling people that we should do something, we should snatch the freedom from the hands of Britishers. So this was not the ideology of Mr. Gandhi. So in 1939, when the elections were going on regarding the elections of the president of Indian National Congress, Subhash Chandra Bose was on one side, and if we talk about on the other side, if we talk about there was a person called Pitabi Sitaramaya, and this person was backed by Mr. Gandhi. Mr. Gandhi wanted him to be the president of Indian National Congress, as Mr. Pitabi Sitaramaya was more aligned with the ideology of Gandhi. So Subhash Chandra Bose won the elections because a lot of people were acknowledging his ideology. But Gandhiji was so upset that he said that it is not the defeat of Pitabi, it is the defeat of mine. So a lot of people feel so emotional on this statement that Subhash Chandra Bose was forced to meet Mr. Gandhi. And then after meeting Mr. Gandhi, he resigned from the post of president. And that is why Rajendra Prasad was particularly became the president of this session. So do remember one thing, that whom Subhash Chandra Bose defeated in the elections of the Indian National Congress president in Tripuri in 1939, that was Pitabi Sita Ramaya. Then comes the 53rd session, that was in 1940, and Maulana Abul Kalam Azad, he became the president of Ramgarh, and no sessions were held during 1941 to 1945, as I was telling earlier also. So from 1940 to 1945, do remember, Maulana Abul Kalam Azad was the president of INC, and no sessions were held. Then the 54th session was particularly organized in 1946. J.B. Kriplani became the president, and this session was held in Meerut. This is really important, guys. J.B. Kriplani was the president of Congress at the time of independence. He resigned in November 1947, after which Rajendra Prasad was elected as the president of Congress. So do remember that. Then comes the 55th session of 1948. Patabi Sitaramaya became the president, and this session was held in Jaipur. The session began with singing the Vande Mataram and Jangan Man. Do remember that during the time of independence, who was the president? That president was J.B. Kriplani. J.B. Kriplani was the same person whose wife, Sucheta Kriplani, later became the chief minister, the first woman chief minister of UP. And these are the famous sessions of Indian National Congress. I hope this point is really clear, and all the things that I told you are particularly noted down by all of you. And that's it in this session, guys. I hope you learned a lot of things with me in this session and gained great knowledge. I will meet you in the next session, in which we will discuss some more things related to the modern history, and we will see the type of things that we can understand from them. And till the time we meet, bye bye, take care everyone, and see you soon.